women as well. So I'm actually concerned about my life, my family's life. Who's gonna be the next person? It's just kind of scary, and sometimes I just try not to, especially on Twitter. Like if you go to Twitter, you will be seeing like different clips, just horrible things that is happening to real people. So
Hmm.
it's kind of scary, like who is going to be next? How okay, we comply. You said okay, yes. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. We comply, you arrest us. We don't comply, you complain. So it's like what exactly are we supposed to do?
Okay.
It's just I'm just concerned about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah. I mean, does anybody else share a similar concern? I think that's a very valid point that you made. That is enough to make anyone fearful, frightened, frustrated, and concerned about their well-being. It, out to the audience again, is there anyone else that has some concerns? Anyone else share the same concern that was just mentioned? Tell us how you feel.
That's you. Of course, yes. It's okay if you ask anything. Go right ahead.
Absolutely.
Bring it forth. You can put it in the chat or you can verbalize it, whichever you choose. Well, that's a great question. How can you access your online classes? That is a great question. I'm wondering if is that something that's offered through Blackboard, where classes would be listed? Um,
I would think so. I think,
Typically,
yeah, I
hmm
would think so. The best thing to do would be to reach out to academic advising, and they would be able to, better help you navigate through how to access your classes, how to navigate through Blackboard. I will go on hold for a second, and I can put the academic
Oh,
advisement
okay.
contact in the chat.
Cool. I
So,
was gonna do that. You go right ahead. All
oh,
right.
okay. Give me one
Thank
second,
you.
but keep the
Uh-huh.
conversation rolling.
Okay. Okay, very good. So yeah, feel free to ask whatever. We're here as a referral and a resource. So that's just one example. In our other session, we actually had a student ask about um, how to register to vote. We were talking about how to affect change, and some of the students brought up the idea of wanting to do more, and the issue of voting came up. And so we were able to get her the information she needed so that she could register to vote. So all questions are certainly welcome here. Excellent. And as you see, my colleague just posted all of those resources for you. So hopefully, if there, that's at least something to get you started. So hopefully that answers your question. Are there any other concerns, whether they're academic or um, whether they're um, uh, based on community events, or how you're feeling about um, being quarantined or being a student of PGCC? Are you feeling supported? Those just any concerns you want to bring forth? Val?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, I thought I might have frozen, so thank you.
Nope, I am here.
All right, sounds good.
So we have the okay. Just needed help accessing my class online. Yeah, another resource would be to reach out to the professor or the instructor of your class because there may be some specific instruction or particular area where that particular class is held. So that's why, we wouldn't be able to give you the actual technical step by. That's one of the reasons why we wouldn't be able to give you the technical step by step on how to access it, and which is the reason why we directed you to a more credible source who would be able to actually navigate you through that process, with the least amount of mistakes possible. And actually reaching out to your instructor or your professor might actually help as well.
It's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. Emailing them directly.
I've had a lot of students that share, that same issue with having, just a little bit of complication with that. And we have actually referred them to academic advising. We've actually referred them to their professors, and it actually has assisted them while they were able to get the information that they needed, and they were able to receive some type of shortcuts to get right to the areas that they want. I know that the transition in itself can be complicated. Online classes can be complicated alone, and then to be thrusted in and forced into a remote online atmosphere could be an additional frustration on top of that. But the best thing that we can do as students, as staff, just as individuals, is just really utilize our resources out there and see all of the different resources that we could use to help us get what we need in a timely manner. So I definitely understand, and I hope that you capitalize off of some of the resources that we put up in the chat, and I hope that they actually help you navigate and answer all of the questions that you need, so that the transition won't be a necessarily bad experience or as much of a complicated experience that it may already be. So as we're in the summer semester, how was your spring semester? How was your fall semester? Just how has your year been going?
Yes, we are in the second half of the year already.
Yeah, how about
Yes,
that?
yes, the second half already. I know when I wrote, uh, June 1st, I couldn't believe, oh my gosh, 6 months already.
Yeah, time is flying. Time is definitely flying.
Yeah, yeah. So what's one student saying in the chat? My spring was pretty good, just too much work. Okay. The life of a student, right? The life of a college student. Too much work. Yeah.
Is anybody having or has had just a tough time balancing home life and academic life?
Hmm.
Okay. I think it still applies. It still applies. I know for me when I was exactly where you were, depending on the programs, the demand, and preparation for matriculation. Sometimes I had to do a lot of sacrificing, hanging out with my friends, had to go to the wayside so I could submit applications, write papers, and just everything that comes along with that. So we just want to try to get a gauge out there of who's having a hard time balancing home, your personal life, and your academic life.
Yeah, it's a good question, Devel. So much so that um, the college had a series of, I think, surveys for students, staff, and administrators, I think,
Hmm.
that came from human resources.
Hmm.
And one of the categories was talking about balancing work and school, or work and academics, or work and family, just that
Hmm.
whole balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly with with the work and family, that's a whole nother mix.
Yeah.
So do we still have a few students with us? If we do, can you give us a 3 in the chat? Let us know that you're still
Yeah.
with
Yep. I
and then
see some threes.
are you seeing so okay?
No, I said let's see some threes. I'm patiently
Exactly, because
waiting.
I mean, if not, Devel, we could talk on the phone.
I think I see some
Okay,
coming in.
we got a couple
Okay.
threes. All right, all
Hmm.
right. Sounds good. Sounds good. So, um, all right, very good. Thank you. Okay, still with us. All righty. Okay. So, is there anything that when you click on the link that you hoped you would hear something about, or that you hope people would be talking about,
That's a good question.
or our students? I can type it in here.
I think that's an excellent question. What are your expectations? What were your expectations coming on today's forum today?
Yeah.
What did you expect to see? What did you expect to hear?
Okay. Consistent. Okay. All righty. Hopefully, you have more information than you did before. In terms of what Devel could put in the chat room for you for resources to follow up on. I think those are going to be some key ones to help you.
Hmm. And they are really timely. They respond. The different departments for the resources that were sent. They're really good with responding back in a timely manner, and they're really good with being very helpful in assisting. So definitely capitalize off of those resources to get exactly what it is that you need.
The other way we could be helpful to you. Oh, that's all right. We actually intend to keep this forum on Fridays. So if you do come up with some questions or want to know something, know more about something, particularly as it pertains to PGCC, um, feel free to log on, bring it forth, and we'll see if we can get you some answers or we can discuss whatever issue you want more information about or you might be concerned about.
Yeah,
What we're here.
absolutely.
So we do thank you for coming on today. Okay. Oh, all righty. So that's good feedback. Thank you. So we'll know when we post it in a way that doesn't cause some confusion.
Mhm.
Thank you. So Devel, you had said that you had captured some of what other students had said last in terms of ideas. Can you do you have that where you could throw those out? Hear what some of those are?
I sure will. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Will post that in the chat.
I'm imagining, for that every time one person says something, it resonates with somebody else somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I agree.
Okay,
So,
does voting matter in today's society? That's a good one, especially in lieu of what's going on the streets of our cities.
Absolutely. So, what do you all think out there?
Well, actually, I think we only have one person out there. I think Angel. Yes. Only me. That's all right. That's okay. You're in a unique position. You've got two counselors here for you, Angel. All right. All right.
I definitely think it. I definitely agree with you. I think it does matter. I think that it's really important, and that's just another way that we enforce change. Being in control over who we elect into what office is really important. And when we don't pay attention or don't put the energy into finding out who's the right person for the right office in our community, we do ourselves and our community a disservice. So I agree. I think it definitely matters. And I know a lot of people have a lot of conflicting views and different views on whether it matters or not, but I still believe that it definitely does matter. Does anybody else out there believe that voting matters in today's society? Because I think we have a few more or one more student that has
Yeah,
entered
yeah.
our forum. And so right now we're just posing the question: does voting matter in today's?
I think kind of part of the, let me come back up. I think the coronavirus has served to change the way in which we participate in the voting process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely true. It definitely has changed it.
Yes, and so because of that, you almost have to um, seek out a way to, yes, it has changed everything. Yes. You almost have to seek out your right to vote.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you have to, and you got to make sure you mail it in by a certain time, and folks really aren't used to that whole mail-in process, and
Hmm.
um, we're not seeing as many ads because the democratic process has changed in a way. So we're not having that build up to the conventions like we normally would. It's very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Different.
It definitely is different. But even with it being different, we still have to be involved. We still have to play our part, and we all have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility
Right.
to our communities, our families, to ourselves, and participating in that process definitely is necessary and definitely needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And so, um, another one of the questions was, you know, how have you been adjusting and how have you been dealing with what's been happening in our society, in our country, and around the world? How are you
Around the
responding?
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you
Yeah.
responding? How
These.
are you coping with that?
Yeah. I think one thing that I heard our student earlier, uh, one who actually spoke, was seeing the images on Twitter
Hmm.
can be very jarring. And yes, they can. And to that, I think it's important to make sure that we don't necessarily, and I mean, we as a people,
Hmm.
as society,
Hmm.
that we don't take in more than we can process.
Yeah, that's true. There is a
That
such
when the
thing.
images,
Yeah.
yeah, when it just gets too much, when you start to get desensitized, you're seeing the same old thing playing over and over. You got to step back. You got to
Hmm.
turn it off. You got to
Yeah.
find something else. You
Yeah.
know, you got to change the channel. You just can't keep digesting and ingesting that information.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely wise to take a step back and regroup if you are in a place where you're just oversaturating yourself with with it all. And what we're not saying is don't be abreast of what's going on. Don't stay cognizant of
No,
what's going
keep
on. We're not
informed.
saying
Be
that. Yeah.
informed. Yeah.
Just don't traumatize yourself, because it happens. Just don't traumatize yourself. Okay, we have a response in. I try to make sure that I only watch so much to stay informed so I don't find myself overloaded. Yeah, that's a good point.
Boom. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good point. Exactly what I was speaking to. Yes. And so, um, remembering that for us, remembering that for any children
Yeah.
who you might contact with, whether you're a parent or auntie, uncle, what have you, being mindful of what the children are taking in as well.
Mm-hmm.
And mindful to have the conversations that are age appropriate. Be very difficult to explain to a 6-year-old what's happening.
Yeah.
By a police officer that they're supposed to be taught to trust.
Yeah.
So, first of all, you hope that the child wouldn't see that image. But if so, having an age appropriate conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that segues way into a comment that was made at our earlier session about the importance of educating yourself. Educating yourself and making sure that you're knowledgeable, you have an understanding of what's going on, you have an understanding of right, wrong, justice, injustices, and you are able to educate others and your loved ones so that, in the event that they do have access to this imagery and have access to more than they really should have at such a young age, we're able to have a understandable conversation, a knowledgeable conversation that is, safe and doesn't create more harm and trauma, because that is a lot to explain to a child whose, impressions are innocent and pure. And, we live in times in a day where you have access to everything, whether we like it or not. We
Push of a button.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you all feel about that? Like, how do you feel about the type of access that we have? How do you feel about, having the responsibility to educate yourself and educate others? Like, what are your thoughts about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know what your thoughts are.
Okay, we've got a student who says that there are particular news outlet that you recommend that states the facts and not give their opinion only in the matter. That's a great question. That's a great question because our news has gotten so polarized. You either watch news from the left or you either watch news from the right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that is a good question. Personally, I tend to get my news from various sources.
Mm-hmm.
I don't rely on one source.
Yeah.
And that will include the sources that I may not traditionally watch, just so I can see what is being said by different parties. So, I would recommend that. I recommend getting your news from different media outlets, and not just. Personally, I like news outlets where I can verify the information. That helps. Where that is trusted, and it looks like we've got some things coming in. Would you recommend both foreign and domestic? You bet.
Absolutely.
You bet. The foreign press has a different perspective when it comes to looking at American politics. Mm-hmm. So, yes. The BBC, there's also different various Asian Pan-Asian as well as African news outlets that are available. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point, Dr. Danielle. You have to have various sources to, just cross reference,
Yeah.
because if you stick to just one source and that one source might not be a credible source, then you're only relying on, as they say, fake news. You're only relying on fake news. And so your perception of what's happening in the world becomes distorted and limited. So you definitely have to, utilize different resources and, those, and we are able to fact check those sources. And what you don't want to
Yes.
do is find yourself surfing social media and being that as your only resource, because the thing about the internet in itself, anybody can put anything up there. And it doesn't mean that it is true, it's legit, it's sound, it's valid, it's evidence based, it's just stuff. So, yeah, I definitely recommend both foreign and domestic news, because not only do you get a different spin from a different lens about what's going on in a particular place, you also become knowledgeable of different things that are happening in different, ends of the nation, the world, the country, and outside of the country. You get information on what's going on somewhere else, and that just helps you become a more knowledgeable, more well-rounded individual. Um, so yeah, and for those that have not um, engaged in foreign news as well as the domestic, I definitely encourage you to do so. I definitely encourage you to do so. And even with that, just like how Dr. Danielle was saying, you got to be mindful of how much you intake, because it all can be overwhelming. You don't want to find yourself just only looking at news, whether it's foreign and domestic, all day, because that could be a bit much. And again, we don't want to traumatize ourselves. We just want to stay cognizant of what's going on. So you got to be careful, and you got to do this in moderation, enough to stay abreast of what's going on, but enough to not make yourself overwhelmed to the point where it's like, you know what, I'm just not going to educate myself at all. I'm not going to look at all, because I've had a lot of individuals who have resorted to that option because, it's just too much. They're watching the daily news, they're watching the local news, they're watching international news, then they getting the updates of what's going on in their social media, the internet, YouTube, and it's a bit much. It's definitely a bit much. So make sure that it's in moderation. We can't emphasize that enough. Just make sure that it's in moderation.
Right. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and say that we're going to call an end to this first Friday form. Well, second Friday form, but
Part two.
part two. That's right. We'll be here next Friday as well. And to your point about the links, we'll make sure that the links are sent out so that they're more clear. But thank you for your participation today. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you back here again next Friday.